Because one of the greatest things that can liberate an oppressed country is information. So if you give them the internet and you give them access to information, for somebody who's been brainwashed by their government, has no idea what's going on in the world, the internet is what can cause revolutions to occur. It's the most essential tool.
All right, so this is Mike Sygula from truththeory.com, and this is Truth Theory Podcast, episode 2. And my guest today is Bill Ottman, who is the CEO and co-founder of Minds.com. Minds is an open source social networking website committed to privacy, decentralization, transparency, and free speech. They raised over $7 million in funding and have been around since 2011. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm all right. It's been a crazy weekend with all of these riots and just everything's happening. It seems like the internet's going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on also with recent development with Trump and his executive order, something, I wanted to talk to you about as well. But maybe let's just start first with a little bit of background on what is Minds, how is it different from, regular social networks? Like maybe you can just give some basic intro.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe the context for how you and I met would be a good way to start. I mean, we met, I think, through Facebook, and Minds, we've always been an open source social network, and I've always known that there's going to be a desire from the world to have a more transparent social network, because Facebook, Google, Twitter, all of them, they're all proprietary, meaning they don't share their software. You can't see what the algorithms are doing. They're spying on people. There's no transparency. So in the same way that Wikipedia rose up or, Bitcoin, these are open source systems that create critical mass because people want more of a cooperative network to be handling that specific industry. So we're seeing open source actually start to take over many different industries because there's so many benefits to it. So, at Minds, we think that's going to happen with social networks. And there are a handful of other open source social networks out there. And we think we're all going to sort of rise because people want that transparency. And what happened with you and I is that we built a bunch of different pages on Facebook. We're driving lots of traffic to our websites because, that was like the one useful thing about Facebook, is that you could actually drive traffic. And then they started taking that traffic away because of the newsfeed algorithms. And so when before you could reach a large percentage of your following, now when you post, you're probably reaching like less than 5% organically. And then their algorithms are determining how many people are going to see it beyond that. And to us, they broke the contract with their customers and their users, because we came in and we gave them energy because we thought we were going to be able to maintain our network. But then they put a blockade between us and our network.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is that they obviously have been changing algorithms and manipulating them in all sorts of ways. So sometimes they're going to promote specific type of content or specific accounts, and they're going to shadow ban other ones, or anything that is more controversial. But also the problem with what you just mentioned, I think, is just once things scale up, if you have, millions of users, everyone has hundreds of friends, they like hundreds of pages, and they only spend a couple of minutes a day, their algorithm needs to try to adapt and show them a couple of pieces of content that are going to be the most relevant. So I think once things are scaling, you have way too much content, way too many people interacting, sharing, and pages. And I think that's one of the problems why the reach is going down. I think it's maybe partially to do with their algorithms, and they do it on purpose. And partially, it's to do with the amount of content being distributed.
Well, that's their excuse. And I think that there is validity to the idea that, yeah, if you're subscribed to 1,000 different channels and you only check Facebook once in a while, they want to make sure that when you come in, yeah, like as you said, when they visit their feed, Facebook wants to make sure that they're seeing a handful of posts that they're likely to engage with. So I'm not, and we're not, anti-algorithm. Algorithms are a tool. The point is that when you subscribe to somebody, I think that you want to know that there is a way to see what you subscribe to. And to be honest, the way that it originally was, the chronological feed, is sort of what we signed up for. And so I think that you should have the option to go to a different, toggle the feed, or maybe you can set your own default feed and decide if you want to have the curated results that, are suggesting the most relevant things, or if you want to see the raw feed. I personally want, I like the raw feed, but, maybe I would go over and check the algorithmic feed, but they didn't really give anybody a choice. They just switched it.
Yeah, I mean, they constantly evolving and changing in all sorts of ways. I'm also curious, because obviously you guys are very much privacy orientated. And do you think that privacy matters to general population? Because, sometimes I think that privacy is a big deal for people like us, activists, and, people who are really concerned with these things. But, if you look at average Joe, who uses Alexa or Siri or whatever, and Alexa is recording your conversations, and they know everything about what's going on in your house. So it seems like most people, they don't care so much about their privacy. They prefer, just easier life, or a little bit of, I don't know, I gotta just talk and I have my taxi or order whatever it is.
Right.
So,
No, I think you're right. Most people don't care, and convenience matters more than freedom. But, it shouldn't be the type of situation where you have to decide between convenience and privacy. And I think that most reasonable people, first of all, I don't think most people know really the depth of what's going on. They buy an Alexa and they think that when it's off, it's not listening. And when it's, when they say something, it's listening. But guess what? In order to be able to activate, it needs to always be listening. So, people are going to most of the time pick convenience. That's just how it's going to go. But I think if you give them equivalent products and one is more privacy focused than the other, then I think as long as the products are as good as each other, most people would choose the more privacy focused version. So I think the challenge is making the product as good, and that's just going to take time.
Yeah, it's insanely hard to build anything of a scale of YouTube or Facebook
or Amazon, or all the voice recognition stuff. The privacy movement, the internet freedom movement, and all of the kind of new alternative apps that are emerging, we're way behind. We're probably hundreds of billions of dollars behind in terms of resources. So it's going to take time.
Maybe you can talk about what's going on with a wave of new users from Thailand. I'm hearing some good stuff. We published an article about it on True Fury. like it seems like there are a lot of accounts that have enough of censorship and they're moving to Minds. And you had some, like how many? 200,000 new users?
Yep.
Just
joined,
right?
Yep. So there's sort of a meme war going on between what's called the hashtag Milk Tea Alliance. And it has to do with Taiwan and Hong Kong and China and Thailand. And, you know, obviously the sovereignty of Taiwan and Hong Kong are sort of in flux. And, you know, China doesn't like to consider Taiwan a country. And so they were sort of all memeing. All the pro-democracy people were sort of memeing, trying to troll China about that. And, you know, additionally, Thai citizens have been upset with revolving doors between big social networks and their government, where basically, you know, the government can ask them to give certain information of users or censor certain content. And, you know, the big networks are complying with that. So, you know, we actually had a wave of Thai people from a couple years ago, like maybe like 50,000 users, and then it just escalated this time when people saw that, you know, Twitter was setting up a sort of, it was called like Twitter Thailand, and it was just sort of this connection with the Thai government that the people were not happy about. And it's really reassuring to see that this can happen, you know, literally in a matter of days. You know, hundreds of thousands of users move, and, you know, that can keep scaling. I mean, it's still growing. So, and, you know, even if you look at a mainstream app like Pokemon Go, actually, they got like hundreds of millions of users within just a few days. So, you know, that's the beautiful thing about what can happen with the internet if the app is ready to scale. And, you know, Pokemon Go was ready to scale, and it's just fun, and it has that entertainment value. We're not talking about the fact that it's a surveillance device for inside your house and scanning all of the space basically to put the little Pokemons everywhere. But so yeah, I mean, our growth has always been like that. I mean, the same thing happened with Vietnam last year. And Facebook has a ridiculous relationship with the Vietnamese government. We got like 200,000 Vietnamese users. Vietnam actually just restricted Facebook's speed and said, Facebook, we are not going to increase your speed unless you give us information about X, Y, and Z user and you take down this content. So Vietnam was basically holding Facebook's speed ransom in exchange for the information, and then Facebook said okay, and so Vietnam increased the speed again.
Are you worrying that you're gonna get you know, these governments trying to influence what you are doing? Did you ever have anyone?
No, we haven't had that happen yet, though I'm sure it will happen. And, you know, we're not going to comply. We just got blocked from the Chinese App Store. I think one of the major ISPs in Thailand is blocking us now as well. So people have to use VPNs, but VPNs are pretty easy to use, and I think most people in more oppressive countries are you know, very well aware of VPNs. They're not really too hard to use. But I mean, it's a tricky question because, and I think we need to stand firm, and unless the community can, you know, come up with a good argument to do, you know, the contrary, basically it is a nuanced argument because even like Google and Facebook are restricted in China. So, you know, we're constantly complaining about Google and Facebook as like the great censors. But the fact that they're not even, those sites are not even allowed in China makes it seem like, well, wow, maybe, you know, Facebook and Google aren't even the biggest problem. You know, you have much more oppressive systems than Facebook and Google. And so Facebook and Google's perspective, like, you know, Google has been trying to get into China. And Go ahead.
No. Just
Yeah. So, there is a compelling argument to say, if you're trying to get your foot in the door in a oppressive country as like a tech company, because one of the greatest things that can liberate an oppressed country is information. So if you give them the internet and you give them access to information, for somebody who's been brainwashed by their government, has no idea what's going on in the world, the internet is what can cause revolutions to occur. It's the most essential tool. So Google would say, well, we just want a version into China so that they can start to get a little bit of information. At least, that's better than no information, isn't it? What do you think about that argument?
I mean, I remember Google tried implementing their stuff, but Chinese government, the Great China Wall, their systems are one of probably the strictest when it gets to censorship. Like, I know a lot of Chinese people use VPNs to access Instagram. They basically have communist regime with facial recognition software and all sorts of like crazy systems like social score system, and you know about it, right? That if you break the law, whatever it is that you do, you might not be able to buy a flight ticket or travel, or they have like really crazy restrictions. So internet obviously is the most important way to communicate and find out any kind of information. So they keep, grip tight. I've heard that one of the things they do is to have hosting companies monitoring the sites they host. In this way, the hosting companies take responsibility for whatever, is going on. So it's easier to control the stuff. So, I think this is obviously one of the biggest markets. It's over 1 billion people, but because of all these rules, it's kind of almost impossible for Facebook or Google to, have a proper market there. They also tend to promote their own companies more.
Exactly.
The same was with Uber. Uber tried to infiltrate the market and, lost, and they were doing all sorts of things. So they would have to really create a different product, which it's kind of doesn't make sense because their products are all about connecting all the different markets together. So they would have to do something that is not doing that, or filtering it on so many levels that it would become probably impossible, or maybe not even viable. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's definitely happening. I mean, I forget, is it WeChat? Is that the big chat app over there? Yeah, and those are just feeding directly into the government, and they control the content, and it's a surveillance grid. So, ultimately the goal for us, it's gonna, we're not really even close to there yet, but this idea of uncensorability, as opposed to, like, right now we're uncensored. We don't restrict any, as long as it's legal and lawful in the US, we don't, it's allowed, and we have filters and whatnot for NSFW, but making ourselves unable to censor and giving people as much control over their data and content as possible is, that's the goal. That's the long-term place you want to get. Now, there's a whole other group of problems that arise in that system, because if you can't delete something, what if there is illegal content? You want to be able to, what if there's child porn? What do you do about that if it's written to a blockchain? You can't delete it. I mean, that's like a sort of paradox. where, you want the freedom, but with the freedom comes all of these problems and risks. So but in many ways, that's where we're headed. Like, if you just look at the evolution of technology, privacy is just diminishing. There's data everywhere. This idea that you can just delete yourself from the internet, or like this right to be forgotten, it's sort of a myth. I mean, it's sort of like acting as if you could delete something you just did like 10 minutes ago at your house. Like, you can't just delete your life. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, we have web archives, so they kind of take screenshots of most of the websites available in Google. So even if you ever remove anything, it still can be found. I was thinking about this whole thing with censorship, because a lot of people kind of don't know how serious censorship is. I think if you are just a regular user, you just might read some headlines here and there. Sometimes maybe one of the channels you've been following disappears or something like that. But if you are someone on the other side, like you and me, so people who either produce content or run these kind of companies, you have access to all these people who talk about censorship, who are demonetized or have their accounts banned, whatever it is. So I think what I've been observing over the last 3 years is just really insane. Like, it's just got so out of control that they basically can do anything they want without any kind of, no one is looking into it. You don't even have abilities to appeal. We had our Twitter account removed a couple of months ago. We've been running this Twitter account for maybe 8 years or something. I don't remember even. And one day I'm checking and it's gone. And there's a message saying that, this account is suspended because it violated Twitter's terms. So we try to appeal, like what kind of content caused that, what activity, because obviously I have no idea. And, we had a couple of people over the years running this Twitter account, different people working for us. So maybe one of them was doing something that I wasn't even aware of. And we couldn't get any information. Like, they just kind of replied saying that, we checked and our decision is final, and that's it. So I don't even know what happened, who did what, which piece of content. And, this is what's going on all the time. And I think they just get away with it because there is no, legal kind of framework. What's interesting is that, for example, in Europe, there were a couple of these cases where Google was sued by European Union for like breaking some antitrust laws, and they got fined twice, I think, in billions of dollars. One time it was because they've been sending some traffic to like their shopping option or something. So they were kind of promoting their own products instead of, or their own features. So, even though it's a kind of private company, they can do what they want on their territory. It's still, European Union decided that's not fair because they are the largest search engine and they should give equal access to other services, right? So I think this is the kind of things that could be done here with the censorship as well. It's like these networks are now like telephone lines. When I call you, I don't have Verizon deciding what I can tell you or what I can not tell you. So, what's your view about this whole thing, and what do you think about this executive order just signed by Trump a couple of days ago?
Yeah, the executive order seems to mostly be enforcing Section 230, which is already in place, which isn't really getting enforced. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Section 230 gives networks or platforms immunity from user-generated content. It would also give a publisher immunity from like the comment section. So if someone comes through and posts some crazy stuff in the comments, defamation or whatever type of illegal content, then the platform isn't liable for it. If there's the language in Section 230 which sort of requires good faith sort of balance with regards to curation, and what the executive order is arguing is that it's imbalanced, and I think that it seems pretty clear that that's the case, that most of the big networks are taking whether you call them political or like certain types of moral subjectivity with regards to content moderation. Like you're saying, I mean, on Twitter, you put a bunch of work, your company put a bunch of work into that page, and you just are left in the dust. You need to have some sort of expectation of rights as a customer and consumer. Otherwise, it's not really it's not fair. So, I mean, I think that the executive order is somewhat reasonable because Section 230 already exists and it's not being enforced. I don't think that they really are aware of how much work that is going to be, because they're going to be getting millions of reports of complaints, and they're going to have to sift through it all, which is just a massive job. And yeah,
I mean, I heard that apparently this Section 230 has been around for like 25 years or something. And initial idea was, when you have these, I don't know, sites like Craigslist, whatever, and someone posts something really inappropriate, like whatever, maybe child trafficking, whatever, they have the right to remove the user or content, whatever, but and you cannot really do anything about it because they have this kind of shield that they have the right to
it does
inappropriate,
like obscenity and stuff like that. Yeah, you have the ability to take down that, but I mean,
it's being stretched to almost anything they want.
Exactly, right? Exactly. It's being stretched, and when you're acting as a publisher on that scale, I mean, it's just the lines have become too blurry, and it's really not fair for the market to have the largest communication platforms who advertise themselves as free speech platforms, essentially, to suddenly be changing the rules, because they've been around for over a decade now, and it's a lot different than it used to be. So they got us all there under one assumption, and then they're changing it. So that is not really fair behavior.
Yeah, I mean, they're changing things, but they keep updating their terms. Sometimes no one even knows how often and they're often very vague. So, anything they want to enforce, they can. And even like the methods they use, like fact checkers, sometimes, this is a fact in a given moment, then something changes 2 weeks later, suddenly it's a different story, but you still get punished and all this kind of stuff. So, you have a lot of people have an argument against it, saying that these are private companies and they can do whatever they want. If you don't want to use them, go somewhere else, all this kind of stuff. What do you think about it? Like, do you think if you have we're living in an era where we share information online and they are literally controlling most of the information we share today, like 3 to 5 companies. Do you think this applies?
I mean, yeah, I tend to think that it's just not fair that they've changed the game mid-game. And I do think a company has the right to create their own policy. And, if you start a company and have a website, you should be able to put, what you want on that website. But if you advertise yourself as one thing, and then like if they came out from the beginning with all of this, I would be much more understanding. But it just seems like every day there's a new restriction, a new type of language which isn't allowed, or a new tactic that will justify them for banning people, and that is just not a sustainable agreement for the largest global communications platforms in the world. If I'm going to put I left Facebook because I don't want them to give them any more of my energy, because I don't trust that it's going to be there for me in the future, and I feel like they could ban me at any time. So why would I give them more of my energy? It's just too much of a risk for the business, to be quite honest, and for myself personally. So yeah, I mean, I tend to think that's a cop-out argument, but for instance, the EFF is saying that the Trump executive order misreads the law promoting free expression online and they're saying that it violates the First Amendment. So basically, I'll just read you this one paragraph. Subsection C1 shields from liability all traditional publication decisions related to content created by others, including editing and decisions to publish or not publish. It protects online platforms from liability of hosting user-generated content, blah, blah, blah. So it also, well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to read this whole article. I'm just, there are civil liberties and digital rights companies saying that the executive order actually violates the First Amendment because of what you're saying. So I think that it's a very gray area, and to be honest, I don't know. I sort of think both arguments have rationality. I mean, given how we're talking about how new networks can just emerge pretty quickly, the market could create a free, that's what we're trying to do. So like, it is possible for us to grow and to create a new solution where, there's different terms. But I'm just very sympathetic, because I was one of those Facebook users, that it's, to some people, it's just not possible. It's not possible to rebuild the audience. It's, too much time and resources has been put in to be able to change that, to be able to migrate that. So,
that's another.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think this is another problem. Like, people think, if I don't like airline, I'm just buying a ticket from a different airline. I have like 20 whatever airlines available. But if I'm out of Facebook or YouTube and I've spent 10 years building my following, I cannot just go migrate and build following overnight somewhere else. It might take me a couple of years. So that's another thing. But, another problem is like, I think that these big social networking websites, sometimes they kind of partially, maybe they don't want to censor things because it upsets a lot of people. But once you get to that level where you have so much influence, you have all these different politicians and groups and organizations and governments that are trying to take advantage or impose their stuff. Is like what you said with, Vietnam, right? That the government wants information from Facebook. You're not giving us information. We're going to slow down your bandwidth or whatever it is. So I think this is another problem, that once you grow into such an influential service, even if your intentions are not to really silence people or censor their information, you might have all the pressure from all these different angles to do some of these things. And because you are, a business, if you are not complying or, you're not doing what you are told, then you might lose revenues or whatever it is, investors, or you might get fined or get in trouble with someone who you don't want to get in trouble with. So I think, you have these pressure from different angles that is going to kind of force them to do certain things they're doing. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of both minds because, forcing, there aren't options. It's like there aren't other options, but there are. So, because when you act like there's no other option, and that companies need to be forced to abide by X, Y, or Z, you're sort of taking away your own responsibility to build your own sustainable methods. But no, it really falls apart, and you can't just be a purist in terms of like, sovereign individuals and companies. It's just they're too embedded in the world. They're too deep, and no one else can see. I just feel like I'm constantly disagreeing with myself, because it's, there's a romantic part of me that wants to think that, that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to build an alternative, and we do think that we can do it. But, if I were in another position and I hadn't been working on this for 10 years, I would probably think that it's impossible. I mean, even after working on it for 10 years, I still, I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's incredibly difficult. So, and we have some resources to play with to make it work, and it's proving to, probably not be enough. But there is a way. It is possible. It's just going to take, a small group of impassioned people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys are in a very good position now when, because of the censorship, so many people are so fed up, like these Thai users, for example, that, people will want to migrate to something different where they don't have to worry so much about their views or sharing their own opinions and be constantly, banned or censored, whatever. And it seems like you guys are in a good position now to start, adapting or getting new waves of users that are restricted or just fed up with big social networking site. What do you think? Like,
absolutely. I mean, yeah, every time this happens, I get a new wave of enthusiasm, and we didn't do anything. That just happened on its own. And every time these types of things happen, we see more surges of activity like that. So, and it doesn't seem like the big networks are reversing course. They actually seem to be going deeper down into the restrictions. And it was funny to me to see Zuckerberg acting like he supports free speech more than Jack Dorsey, and that they wouldn't fact check or like restrict President Trump's tweets or posts. But I mean, my dad actually had a funny analogy for that. It's sort of like Stalin criticizing Mao. I mean, it's like they play games. They try to leverage and manipulate language to make people think that they support certain ideas. But when you actually look at how their network works, I mean, they shouldn't even be able to talk about free speech. It's just not. It's not there.
Yeah, no, it's funny. He said something about it, that social networking sites shouldn't be fact-checking or arbiters of truth, when actually they kind of inform even regular users now if they clicked on anything they consider misinformation. So you get warnings or notifications. You might have interacted with false post, whatever. So that's kind of completely doesn't make any sense.
Right. And I mean, I'm not against, I don't think fact checking, like it would be crazy to be against fact checking. I think that we're all probably pro fact checking. That's okay. But that doesn't, they're not providing balanced context. They're hiring a handful of organizations to fact check certain information, like Snopes and these types of companies, and they seem to be the ones deciding if it's true or not, as opposed to like a crowdsourced contextualization tool where people can apply citations, and maybe you could even have experts from the network vote and create a real fact-checking environment where the user would still be able to make their own decision, as opposed to the network just saying that this is information because something got triggered, some language was used, maybe some like holistic medicine was used in an article, and their tools are sloppy. Like YouTube was just deleting comments of anything that was critical of the Chinese government. Just if it was, and they came out and said, "Oh, it was a mistake." But I mean, it wasn't a mistake. It was engineered that way, and yeah, maybe that was a mistake. But like, you did it on purpose. So, all of these AI tools and machine learning that they have to develop, targeting of different images and, natural language processing, this is they'll never be able to catch up to the complexity of human language and memes, because memes are always going to be on the edge. You could make a meme that means the opposite of what it says. I mean, if I say, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, man, I don't care.
Is this a free speech zone? If you say, I fucking love you in a tweet, now Twitter is going to say, hey, are you sure you want to say that? Because you could get reported. They have this new like warning that comes up if you use swear words. But actually, if you say I fucking love you, I mean, that's like a nice thing to say. Or you could even say I hate you, but it means like, like if a girl's like, I hate you, but like they actually love you because they're just saying I hate you. So like language is weird. There's all kinds of backwards meaning. So the AI is never going to catch up.
Yeah, and then, it's like you have to worry every time you say something, you do something that you might be, analyzed and censored. And another problem that I see with fact checkers is that their job is to confirm what is the current mainstream view, which often changes. Or, if someone is lying and you try to investigate that, and the fact checker is just going to confirm the official story, then you are not able to even investigate that, because all they do is just reaffirm the mainstream version of the story. And like one example we had a couple of like 2 months ago, we wrote an article which was kind of based on a story written by New York Post, which was looking at coronavirus, and it was very, just giving opinions of two groups of experts and quoting them, saying that, this group believes that the virus originated from the bat, this group believes that maybe it came from the lab, Wuhan lab, and that's it. It wasn't even like giving any kind of indication that you believe this or that. It just showed that there are these experts that believe or claim, whatever, that maybe it's not from the bat. And it was actually based around the story from New York Post, and both New York Post article and our article got flagged. And you couldn't argue with the fact checker. There was no discussion. They said like, this is not true. It's 100% coming from bot, and your story indicates that might not be the case. And a couple of weeks later, you get, like all sorts of outlets saying that maybe there is actually a chance that it originated from a lab and not from the bot. So suddenly, things are changing, and you cannot even report on what the other side of the story says, because according to these fact checkers, they already made up their minds about what is truth, what is not true.
Absolutely. Like I wouldn't be surprised if even if you were taking the side of the fact checkers and all you did was just present the argument of the other side, you would probably still get flagged, even if you agree, just because the content is there at all.
Yeah, and I noticed that they often target smaller, less known publications. I've seen several times some kind of misconceptions or, half truths in bigger publications, and they never get targeted. It's like almost never happens. So they kind of like stay away from them, because imagine if you're going to find a flaw in an article of Forbes or some bigger publication, they're going to think like, who are you to decide, that our publication has been around for 100 years is sharing false information. Like, you are just some kind of tiny organization. So I think they are often not even wanting to investigate bigger publications as much as they do with independent ones, because it's just no one's gonna say anything about it. So what's your I know you guys have some kind of blockchain technology in the background. What is it like? You're working on some decentralized features. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about like some of these cool features you're working on, and like what's your favorite features on Minds, and what can we expect in the next year?
So yeah, we have a integration with the Ethereum blockchain. We have our own token, the Minds token, which is in ERC20, and basically you earn them for your contributions every day. and you
can you buy can you buy tokens on exchanges, and does the price
I think they're
fluctuate?
I think it's popping up on Uniswap and some places like that. You can also buy them at minds.com/token. We've been careful about engaging with the secondary markets because there's all sorts of legal risks with regards to, you know, the difference between a utility token, which is what we are, and a security token, and you can't really it's illegal to facilitate like unregistered securities. So that's the whole debate in the crypto world. And, you know, a lot of tokens are pretending to be utilities, but they're really securities, and people are just using tokens as like a fundraising mechanism, which is really not what we're doing. We use it as like the fuel for the network, like, or even if you're like a gift card, or if you go to a video game arcade, you get tokens and you can use them to buy our products. So like you can buy Minds Plus or Minds Pro with our tokens. You can boost your posts with our tokens. It's really the fuel of the network. And yeah.
What's the difference between the two types of tokens you mentioned?
So there's a utility token, which is sort of like what I'm talking about. It's you know, there's a use for it. There's a utility. It doesn't represent ownership in the company. A security token is what some companies are doing, and they basically create a token to represent the stock or the ownership structure of the company. And there's really great security tokens out there. And I think that tokenized securities are actually fascinating because, you know, there's more control over your ownership. There's more flow. There's more liquidity. But, and to be honest, I would be open to potentially tokenizing our equity at some point in the future, but it's a totally different type of application of the technology. Some people do use ERC20 tokens for securities, but it all depends on, you know, because anyone can make their own Ethereum token. So you could say, yeah, I'm going to make a token, and I'm going to have, say I have 100 shares of stock. I'm going to create 100 tokens and give those tokens to all the stockholders in the company. You could do that, and there are companies who do that. So, but that's not what our token does. So, yeah, and then, you know, we're looking at other tools to kind of decentralize our infrastructure. We've implemented WebTorrent, which allows for like peer-to-peer video bandwidth to help so that users can help with the bandwidth of all the video processing, which is great. We're working on Federation for...
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. So basically, you start using my
browser,
own computer or browser kit, and you use my memory or whatever to help you with your servers.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, we've actually had to disable it for this immediate moment because of some issues with Brave. But Brave actually has a whole WebTorrent integration, and so Brave is, you know, obviously one of the best browsers, and they have their own ERC20 token as well, the BAT token, where you can, I don't know, have you guys set up with them on True Theory?
No.
Oh, you should become you should become a publisher with Brave. You can just you can just.
I mean, how does it work? I don't even.
You'll just start earning BAT tokens just for people coming to your site.
Yeah, I think I remember that project.
It's called the Basic Attention Token, and that's Brave browser's token, and they have a really interesting reward system where you can tip different websites and whatnot. So, you know, and it's very similar utility as the Minds token. So we have that, and then, you know, we're also looking at like we talked about early in the conversation, publishing to different types of distributed systems so that your content can't get taken down. We haven't done that yet because it's obviously very sensitive and complex, but we do want to. And then we're also working on ActivityPub, which is what Mastodon and Diaspora use for subscribing to people on different nodes and being able to post across nodes so like if someone, like you could set up your own version of Minds and, you know, our versions could talk to each other basically. That's pretty interesting, but federation doesn't really fix censorship issues. It does increase resiliency of the network, and it's a good thing that we support. So we're probably going to work on that as well. And then, I mean, we have monetization features in fiat as well. We have a pretty robust payout system with Minds Pro so that, you know, publishers who drive traffic to us, we can help pay them out for the traffic that they drive. And we're also, one of the things that I'm most excited about, which I'm curious your take on it, is what we're about later this quarter. Users will be able to submit content to Minds Plus, like premium content. So in Minds Plus is basically it's like $7 a month. You get, you know, a handful of bonus features and access to exclusive content, similar to like Netflix. But ours will be more like a community powered Netflix, where say True Theory submits 5 videos and you will get paid out based on the popularity of your content in our premium library. So imagine if Netflix paid out to creators who submitted content to it every month, and it was based on, you know, the popularity of that content, more of a distributed Netflix model. So I think that is really exciting because a lot of creators don't have, you know, we do facilitate memberships similar to Patreon, but for a lot of creators, that's like too much of a pain. It's really hard to develop a membership following. So if we take a percentage of our revenue from Minds Plus and share that with the people who are submitting to it, it's everyone will get a little bit of something as long as it gets, you know, some views. And yeah, I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, but so you have any kind of user paying $7 a month to have access.
Yeah, and
they can upload their own videos. So will it be only used by video content creators?
No, it'll be any. It'll also be for premium blogs or other content.
And everyone gets paid for views, blog posts as well, or videos?
Yes.
But, you know, the money comes from that money accumulated from all the users, right?
Right.
So it's kind of someone needs to lose for someone else to gain, in a way, right? Because let's say if you have like whatever amount of users and you get $1 million, it all has to be distributed between all the users who are already paid for it anyway. So if I'm getting $14 this month, someone gets nothing because I took his $7 in a way, right?
Well, yeah, basically. I mean, you're not in order to earn. Yeah, the money has to come from somewhere. So, you know, like people have to pay, you know, but a lot of people just want to pay to consume content. I mean, a lot of people want to pay for a product and they don't expect to, you know, get paid back. You know, people pay because they want to either support the project, or they want access to the content, or they want bonus features. So, I mean,
but the content will be available for everyone.
The content, the premium content is only available to people who subscribe to Minds Plus.
It's going to be closed completely. Like
that content will be. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same. Just imagine you could sign up for Netflix and upload your documentary, and if it does well, you get paid out. But you had to be a Netflix subscriber in order to get paid. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, I see.
I mean, I think that like, because Netflix, Disney Plus, you know, all of like these models work. It's a sustainable model. I mean, even publishers are moving to membership models, like the New York Times. Like, I think that their membership move has been, one of the best things, especially online, the best things ever for their business. I think people do want to support the creators and the content that they want, because the only alternative is to have all these ads all over the place, which, is fine. And I think that that's good in certain circumstances, but, voting with your dollars, I do think is where things need to go, and just making it easy for people to support the publishers and the creators that they like.
Yeah, so I think that, in order to make it work properly, you probably need to get a lot of people signing up in the same time. Because, if you kind of get people joining slowly, the critical mass might not be big enough to sustain the people who want to produce high quality content. I think you got to kind of move like a couple of thousands of people all at once or something like that. Have you thought about that?
You mean as paying subscribers, or as people, or as publishers who are submitting to it?
I mean, I think both.
Both.
I'm not sure percentage wise, but it's kind of, if you add you start rolling it out slowly, it might not get enough of people to keep continuing.
No, I definitely agree that, for the launch, we're going to be bringing in as indie filmmakers, as many quality content producers as possible from the alternative world, in order to and honestly, is independent filmmaking is, I tend to like indie films better than mainstream films anyway. So we already have a bunch of them on the network, and we're going to be launching with them. And but yes, absolutely. I mean, any streaming service that launches needs to have a ton of content lined up, and it needs to have a ton of momentum in order to gain steam. So yeah, that's the hard part. But I think that I definitely agree with you. You need critical mass.
So when do you think you're going to be launching? You have any timelines on your mind?
Probably first thing in July. We'll be launching that product. And what else? I mean, we're doing a whole new messenger based on the Matrix protocol, which is just much more robust. Our messenger, to be honest, sort of sucks right now. But Matrix is really good, and it's encrypted, and you can share all the media, and it's just much better. So, and they've done the legwork in terms of making it privacy and focused and secure. So that's really big. And yeah, man, just everything. I mean, every app is becoming the same thing at this point. It's like, if you look at Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, what is the app? The app is a feed. You can create content, you share it, you do stories. The stories on every app now. They're all becoming the same, because I think that's really fascinating to me, because it's sort of showing how humanity wants to communicate. It's like, we like holding the button and capturing what's around us and sharing the story. Stories have emerged as like a very effective form of communication. And so the fact that everything's coalescing around this set of functionality, which includes, video and feeds and messenger, that's cool. That shows what the big networks have done right. And because they've done a lot of stuff right, we wouldn't be using them if they don't. So I try not to totally hate all the time, because there's tons of smart people there who have made good decisions, and they're great designers. I mean, Instagram specifically, I think is a beautifully designed app. It's one of the best.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think these networks, they're great. They allowed us to reach people, share message, make friends, all these kind of things. But something's going on in recent years. It's hard to figure out exactly what. I've noticed that it's super hard to grow your channel on Instagram or Facebook, or especially if your channel is small. But I don't know. It seems like some channels are in this good algorithm, whatever it is. Other ones are completely stagnant. No matter what you do, like, you're not growing. It's almost, I think on Minds, actually, if you're, you're just starting out, or you have smaller following, you actually see activity and you see new followers. Like we post on Minds, we have only 5,000 followers, but I see people every day. We're adding people every day. And when I use Instagram with, like, for example, my personal account, which is very small, it's like 1,000 something followers. It's like one day I get 2 followers, the other day I lose 2 followers. And it's all the time the same. It's even on, my Facebook page on Facebook, which is 1.8 million people. It stopped growing around maybe 3-4 years ago. It was like up and down, changing maybe 5% this way, 5% the other way. So there's something going on with the way they do things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know exactly,
I mean, that's scary. Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be honest, what you just said about the fact that like a normal creator trying to grow, not like the biggest brands, but like if you sign up for Minds and you work at it and you boost and you connect with people and you make good content, like, you will grow, and you will grow to getting thousands of followers. And we have users with like 150,000 subscribers, and it's you can do it. We're the best for the small to medium, and hopefully as we grow we'll become more relevant for bigger brands once we can get millions more users. But like, it's just crazy that on Instagram they have billions of users, but you could be more successful on Minds even though we only have a couple million users. That to me, so in the context of like a normal person, it's yeah.
I'm thinking maybe they do it on purpose, so you boost and pay for giving you followers. Kind of they change the way they do things, so you actually, if you want to get more followers now, you need to pay for it. I was thinking maybe this is one of the things going on. It's kind of hard to figure out.
I know, but think about, like, no normal person is gonna like advertise themselves. Everyone would, I mean, unless it's free. Like on Minds, you just earn it for free, and so people will boost. But like, if you were on Instagram and you saw like your best buddy like having like a promoted post, you would be like, what? Why are you doing that? Like, you shouldn't. I mean, maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't judge of people. But I don't think you should have to do that. I mean, I think that there should be some sort of natural growth built into the system like it used to be. I mean, there was something going on back in the day on Facebook where pages were getting recommended if they were, getting good metrics, and it's absolutely changed. But you got to just dabble in. But my recommendation is just dabble in both worlds. You don't have to go cold turkey. You don't have to leave all of the fun big tech apps. Those they're great. YouTube is great. Amazing content. I probably had a college education level of information on YouTube, and I don't regret it. But I would just love it if we could, 10 years from now, we could be having another podcast and there was just a handful of alternatives that were just huge, and they represented people's principles and freedom. And, you know, Facebook and YouTube, they can still be around. They're not going anywhere. It's not, you know, I don't think we're going to see a MySpace out of Facebook. It's not going to happen because MySpace wasn't as embedded in culture as these apps are. The MySpace was like in the early stages. You know, they didn't have like APIs all over the place. They weren't in everybody's phones. Like, I don't even think there was really smartphones back when MySpace was big.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, MySpace, I think there were tons of issues, design issues, all sorts of other things. Facebook had tons of good ideas on so many different levels. They started the newsfeed. You know,
Right.
there's a lot of things. I think they're always trying to innovate. It's just always like the problem with social networks is that they can grow fast, they can fall fast, you know, because of these network effects. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what's going to happen. Maybe smartphones are not, we won't use smartphones in 10 years from now, you know, like 15 years ago, we didn't have smartphones. Maybe we're going to use Neuralink or some kind of virtual reality or augmented reality headsets. We'll see where it's going to go. Like, that's one of the things as well to consider because, you know, if you're growing slowly, which is hard if you don't have funding, right? You know, things might change in a couple of years and it's going to get harder to catch up as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful for the growth that we've already had. And this is for any publisher, like why I recommend backing yourself up now, because if we look at how much harder it is to grow than it was 10 years ago, it's going to be that much harder in 10 years. So, you know, the idea of creating new platforms in 10 years is going to be that much more impossible. So for any brand who's trying to protect themselves, you know, it's having diversity, and obviously you only have so much time for so many networks, but dipping your toes into alternatives is just a safe thing to do.
Yeah. I just wanted to also ask you about your techniques, because obviously as someone who is running such a complicated business, and it's so incredibly hard thing to do, like how do you stay sane? What's your personal development routines or practices that you use? Do you have anything like that?
For sure. I mean, recently fitness has been much more of a priority in terms of mental health. I've been doing this challenge with a bunch of friends, which actually I think that this has potential for an app, and there may even be apps for it, but it's about group fitness and creating goals as a group. Like, we're doing 200 push-ups a day for 100 days. And it is amazing. I mean, I feel great. I feel so much better. You know, not only from being in better shape, but also for the mental enhancement from discipline. You know, just being disciplined daily and doing the things that you kind of don't want to do, but you feel a little bit better when you do them. The satisfaction you have and the decrease, that there's a major stress decrease that you get when you are disciplined. And
maybe this is a feature for minds, you know, maybe you guys should try to do something like some group bets, whatever it is, you know, motivate. It's easier to motivate people this way. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, yeah, every app needs a social engine at this point. So one thing, anyone out there listening who wants to develop an app, it needs to be, you know, you need to have a social engine within it. Otherwise you're not going to scale. But I mean, yeah, you got to walk away from the computer. I do work from home now. We had an office, but it wasn't worth it. But getting out of the house is important. And, you know, I think being able to handle criticism and not let it push you off your path is really important. I mean, whether you're a creator or like a technologist, like people always talk about negative comments and, how do you deal with negative comments? And, ultimately the most successful creators in the world have tons of negative comments. I mean, even if you're, Joe Rogan or PewDiePie or whoever, they have so many trolls, and trolls are just a part of life. And, they're defending some sort of idea that they think is legitimate. And, sometimes you have to look at that and take feedback, and you just have to be able to ignore it as well and stick to what you're trying to build and try to build an accurate representation of what you're thinking. And if you can get that out, then it takes time to get that out and to be able to create accurate representations of what your vision is. But that's what people respect. So even if you have a lot of trolls, if you're standing tall in your vision, then there's authenticity about that people respect. So that's why the biggest creators in the world have a ton of trolls, but millions more people who love them, because they're walking, their walk. And, when it comes to technology, like we still have not manifested the full accurate vision of what we're trying to create. So I'm just trying to keep working, keep building. And, eventually there will come a point where I think I'll be able to step out and say, okay, this is a generally accurate manifestation of what the vision is. I think we're probably, we're not there yet. And I don't even want to put a time on it when I feel like we're there in a basic sense. But yeah, I don't know if that's coherent, but you just have to, not let yourself get derailed by people who are hypercritical.
Yeah, I think this is really important. I see a lot of people get very emotional on social media. You share your view, whatever it is, you have all these critics. And, I think if you have high level of emotional intelligence, you won't allow it to affect you. You need to understand that whatever you do and you put yourself out there, you're going to get criticism. And I think, if you keep working on something, you will find a way. Even like what you started doing initially was so difficult, right? It took a lot of time to get anywhere. And you persisted and you stayed on track, and things are moving forward. You start getting funding, you start getting better designs, better features, more users are moving, things are changing. So eventually you're going to get there, but it's just about persistence and staying committed to your goals. I think you're absolutely right. And thanks for, joining me. And, I really like what you guys are doing. We're going to share some links. I think if you want to start out on Minds, you actually have bigger chance of growing and sharing your ideas than on more established networks. So, thanks for everything, and till next time.
Thanks for having me, Mike.